Alright, hello, and welcome to, finally, another rework video. So, today we're going to be talking about Chroma. Chroma is a Warframe that I honestly like a whole lot, but I think he could be, A, a lot more interesting, and B, better at competing with the other tanks in the game. Because, as of right now, Chroma has a bit of clunkiness to him, and some abilities that don't really see use in any, actual play. So, let's get started here on what Chroma does right now. So for right now, you've got Chroma's 1. This is Fire Breath, Ice Breath, Lightning Breath, I suppose, and Toxin Breath. So this is totally worthless. I'm not gonna play around. It's complete garbage. That ability just needs to be completely replaced, essentially. His 2, Elemental Ward. Under fire, this gives you a health buff and a little bit of a fire AoE, which is kind of nice. On ice, gives you more armor and the ability to reflect projectiles, which is really good. Ice is probably the single best for Chroma currently. And with electric, it gives you some reflect damage and also extra shields, which is meh. And then under toxin, you do a small AoE of some toxin damage. And then also you have your holster and reload speeds increased pretty dramatically with enough strength, actually. So that ability is okay. It's kind of fine. And then, finally, we have Vex Armor. Vex Armor is probably the thing that's making Chroma function as of right now. And it increases your armor and damage based on if you're taking damage to your shields or your health, respectively. So, as you can see, I get Scorn. That's an armor increase. Then as I take health damage, I get Fury, which is my damage output increase. So that's very good. It encourages you as Chroma to take damage, and it allows you to take damage, which is very nice, of course. But the problem with that ability is that you can't refresh it. Once you've built up those percentages, once that timer hits 0, and right now I've got a pretty long timer, it's like a reasonable length. Once that timer hits 0, though, you're in bad trouble because now you have to rebuild those percentages, and at very high levels, you can be killed instantaneously with no percentages. So, keeping those consistent, and once you've built it up, you just keep going, is pretty important for a tank. Consistency is king, of course. And then, beyond that, you've got your 4. So, this has some niche uses right now in credit farming, but is not actually very useful. It occasionally roars for a stun, which is kind of interesting, but is inconsistent, so you can never count on it. Its Fire Breath is just your 1, which, as we've gone over, is kind of totally useless, although I believe it's a bit stronger than your 1. Still kind of useless, but nice, I suppose, to have around. So, that could see some more interesting changes to make it better and more important to Chroma, because right now, if you completely forego using this, you're tankier because of it, because you remove some of your armor to do this. So, making that worth it, and worth the 10 a second energy drain at base, is pretty hard. So we're going to attempt to do all of these things and fix all of these things about Chroma. Also, worth noting, his passive is that choosing your energy color dictates your elemental type, which is going to change dramatically as well. So, this passive ability to change your element type, I want to just roll this into your 1. Make it like Ivara's Quiver, in that tapping it will just change you between your elements, or holding it, you can obviously swap back and forth between that stuff now, which is great. So, you'd put that on your Spectral Scream. You'd be able just to tap it and be like, I am fire, I am ice, I am toxin, I am electric, at will. Which is really good, adds a lot of versatility to the rest of your abilities. Awesome. Beyond that, the actual screaming portion of this is just a shitty fire, ice, toxin, or electric effect. So that's gotta go completely. Just get that shit out of here. Instead, let's give him a tool that's actually really good for tanks. An aggro scream. It's a thing that we don't have right now, and it can be unique to Chroma, and better in certain situations than other tanks because of that. So, you would be able to roar and draw threat from enemies around you. I think that the base range should be probably 30 meters, not 20. 20 might sound like it's worse, but I think that it being at 20 makes it too manageable, and giving it a much larger range so you're drawing a lot more enemies makes it a more dangerous ability to use, but still very powerful. So I think the nerfed, like there's a middle ground of it being really powerful, which I think is about 20 meters, and then there's like the outside extremes, which I think give you different disadvantages. Obviously, 10 meters is too short for an aggro scream unless you're like really focusing on certain enemies that you're very close to, which is reasonable. But having it be much larger puts you in a lot more danger, which I think is still effective because you have to plan for being in that much danger. So I think that would be pretty damn good. Elemental Ward. Not a ton of changes here because Elemental Ward is still a respectable ability. I would make this recastable, which essentially means that whenever you cast 2, as you can see I just gained 400 health. Basically, I would just be able to hit 2 again to cast it again, spend the energy again, and then regain that 400 health. So basically, if I were to take, like, let's say 300 damage, I'd be able to cast this ability again and gain 400 health, which I think would be respectably good. And with your element switching, obviously you would like switch to ice and then you'd gain armor instead of health, and that kind of thing. I think that would be really good use there. I think it would make Elemental Ward a lot more appealing to use in the electric and the fire elements as opposed to ice, which is very strong. Pretty clearly the strongest right now, which I will not be buffing at all. Then beyond that, because shields are so weak, making it so that it gives you double the amount of shields it gives you right now, I think would be a strong change. Beyond even that, Toxin is actually kind of fine how it is, even though it is more situational. So all I would do is make it so that the damage that Toxin can put out is just increased to a range of 36 meters, which is about triple what it is right now. I think that's relatively reasonable. And then, on top of that, the elements that are not ice, so you have fire and electric, just double, or increase by 8, just 20. Increase their range up to 20 meters base. That means that ice stays where it is in terms of power, but you're kind of buffing up the elements that don't get a lot of love. Beyond that, we've got Vex Armor. This is the easiest thing in the world to fix because you're just fixing a consistency issue, so you just make this refreshable, which is an important difference from recasting because with refreshing, you just keep your percentages and you reset your timer. That's all you're doing there. Makes that ability very consistent. You have to manage it, you have to pay attention, but you have made Chroma more consistent and more forward with his tanking, let's say. Beyond that, let's talk about Effigy. This is kind of the biggest change that I want to make, if I'm being completely honest, because what I want to do is, let's say you cast your 2, and you've got this buff going. Then you cast your 3, and you've got this buff going, and so you get some percentages to that. Having your 4 inherit those, like you peel off your pelt, and then what you have here is your 2 on this, and then your 3 making this tougher so that it's harder to kill. And with that, then you can have your elemental wards be independent of one another, where this inherited your current elemental ward, but then you can switch to, say, electric and get the electric buff from elemental ward, while this one has fire, and then you have a lot more health and shields. So you'd be able to, very carefully, and expensive in energy, honestly, stack up your buffs, and it would make this an actual thing that can take some damage by giving this the Vex Armor buffs, and it would increase its damage by a little bit to make it more reasonable. Along with that, the Stunning Scream being very consistent is pretty important to me. So at base, I would want to have this thing scream every 15 seconds, but have that duration be reduced with positive duration. In the way where, let's say you get to 200% duration, you would go from every 15 seconds to every 7.5 seconds. It would do the Stunning Scream. That is a lot more consistent so that you can plan to have it happen. Very important. Obviously, is a little bit of a higher skill cap thing than we would normally have, but I think it would be a good change overall. And then, finally, to encourage players to actually use it, the 10 energy a second is a little too much for a Warframe with this much energy, and the need to cast all of his abilities quite a bit. So I would want to reduce it from a base of 10 energy a second to a base of 6 energy a second, just so that you could actually have this thing out more consistently without burning your entire energy pool just by having it out for a little bit. But yeah, that's what I would want to do with Chroma. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I think it would make him a lot more interesting to play. I think it would give you a reason to use all of his abilities in conjunction with one another. And it would bring him up to the level of like a lot of the other tanks, like Rhino and Inaros. So yeah, that's the Chroma rework that I have in mind. And I'll see you guys tomorrow.